Is love worth it? Is the effort of love worth it anymore?
Nobody is lying on their deathbed thinking, oh, well, I got all those lists done.
Protecting your peace feels like something more powerful to do rather than open yourself up, rather than being vulnerable and risking disappointment once again.
It's too much trouble. The man keeping was it was a lot of work and it wasn't interesting.
Is it that women have chosen peace over love? Or is it sometimes that what they've really chosen is protection of their heart over possibility? Hi, and welcome to Dating Dames V2. I am Jackie, and this is my lovely co host, Michelle. Whether you're single, divorced, newly divorced, or simply willing to awake to the possibility of love once again, you're in the right place because here at Dating Dames, we believe it's not about him, it's about you. And today we're talking about a topic that it was actually something we saw on a reel on Instagram. And it was the question that many women over 50, divorced or out of long-term relationships are asking themselves again. And that is love worth it? Is the effort of love worth it anymore? Not because you can't find it, not because you don't desire it, but because protecting your peace feels like something more powerful to do rather than open yourself up, rather than being vulnerable and risking disappointment once again. And recently, as I was saying, both of us, we watched this reel and this woman was she was explaining and sharing her conclusions as to why she's no longer wanting to date. And when we started listening to it, the reasons that she shared were the following. She spoke about her independence, and what we heard was something deeper. She spoke about sexual intimacy being better in her mind than in reality. She mentioned guys. Yes, it is. At times it is, but many times it's not as well. And she spoke about men groping her. She spoke about after age 40 men with ED. She spoke about men with STDs. And this was, I assume, related to the partner she had for a very long period of time. And then she spoke about that she felt best. She was her strongest version of herself when she was alone. She was more productive. She was more hyper-focused. And then the third thing she mentioned was that she would rather be of service to many people than a slave to one man. And the example she gave was, if you've had trouble in your life, traumatic experience, I can be the woman that brings you a casserole. If you need somebody to help you to go to the dentist, I can be that person for you. If you need charity work to be done, I can be that person for you. But what really fascinated us as we spoke about this reel was the reasons. It wasn't just the reasons that she gave. It was all the comments that we saw underneath from thousands of other women saying, yeah, I know exactly how you feel. I feel the same way. I'm happier on my own. I'm happier single. Dating is just too much of an effort. And I'd rather protect my peace. And that prompted a conversation between Michelle and Anna and started making us wonder, is it that women have chosen peace over love? Or is it sometimes that what they've really chosen is protection of their heart over possibility? And that's the conversation we want to explore today. Hey, Michelle, welcome. How are you doing?
Thanks. I'm good. Yeah. I think we both noted that in the Instagram sphere of Reels and Facebook sphere, there's a lot of discussion about women, especially, and to some extent men, though sometimes that takes sort of a weird negative turn. But women just saying, what? It's too much trouble. The man keeping was it was a lot of work and it wasn't interesting. And so I kind of wanted to start on the sexual intimacy side, where she said, it sounds better in theory than in reality. And, I have a couple thoughts about that. That's, first of all, it can be absolutely true, even whether you're married and in sort of a sort of tepid sort of sexual relationship that never seems to go anywhere, or whether you're dating. And in dating, you can have bad experiences, you can have disappointing experiences, but you can also have amazing experiences, which I think we've both had. But it wasn't just that. I mean, it wasn't just that they were disappointing, and it did occur to me that she is, at least 50% of this situation, that she can also contribute. But it was just that she was looking at it so negatively, like, there's no hope here. There's no possibility that it will ever be good again. And the funny thing to me is that, first of all, I think I am a much freer, more open person now than I ever was in my marriage. And the connection that I feel when I am in maybe dating someone for a while, and, that has been amazing to feel that connection. It's not just sex, right? It's a connection that you feel with someone. It's curiosity, it's playfulness, it's the tenderness, it's the staring into someone's eyes in those moments. It's that emotional closeness, and it's certainly vulnerability at times. But, in many ways at this age versus when I was 25, 27 and dating the last time, I feel much more confident about what I want, what I can ask for. And I think in that sense, the intimacy can actually become much richer with our age. And yeah, maybe you might have to deal with some other things, although most of those are overcomeable. Those should not be the reasons, whether it's drugs or, whatever you do to achieve that. But if we dismiss it out of hand, as in like, there's no way the sex will ever measure up to what's in my head, well, then of course that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You're never going to find it. And you're closing the door to this aliveness that you can get, this connection of being human. And actually, there's a book or two that I've read that really talks about how that pleasure taps into your feminine energy, and without it, you become a little bit, you become a lesser, right? A bit dead, because you never feel that pleasure and you never have that connection. And that's not where we want to be at this age, in my opinion.
No, yeah, and experiencing the fullness of life, of pleasure, of your body. I think it also taps into a feminine energy that unless you're experiencing, you don't really share. And it's really great. You notice women who are really deeply connected to partners just by walking by them. You see, they have this energetic glow about them. I know you've experienced it, and I know you've had other women come and like they look at you and they smile because you know exactly what's happening with the two of you, because that energy that you give off is so palpable. You can almost touch it. And at this stage of life, the great thing is you get to prioritize, you get to decide. You are no longer trying to dim yourself. And so you can open yourself up to possibility. I think two words that spring to mind immediately, and it's probably our two favorite words, is for yourself adventure, and for myself it's possibility, and combine the two and you open yourself to the possibility of adventure. So yes, emotional closeness, and it's not just sex, it's really connection with another person, opens up a whole new world. And then the second thing that you spoke about was women speak about this and have spoken about this for years after divorce. It's, of course, once you are divorced, you start rebuilding your life. You start thinking, ooh, I can be open to someone, to meeting someone.
Yeah.
That could be exciting. I haven't been touched in a while. I haven't connected with somebody intimately in a while, or I haven't just had a great conversation with somebody in a while. And so your attitude starts changing, and you open yourself up to possibility, to meeting someone. You start going on a few dates. Some are great, some are just rubbish, some are in between. And one man disappoints you, and then the second disappoints you. And slowly you start changing your thoughts, you start changing your you start changing your tune, and slowly you slip into, oh, do you know what? It's okay. I'm actually happier on my own. I don't need a man. I don't need the drama in my life. And dating just feels like way too much of an effort. And when you start listening to those words, they don't always sound like freedom, and they don't sound like independence. They sound like fatigue of experiencing the same disappointment. And they becomes amplified in your life. And sometimes you start risking, or you stop risking, being open to love again, because you start thinking, oh, it simply just isn't worth it. I know we've spoken about this already. Once you're in isolation, it's like going on a meditation retreat on your own. You come back, you feel healed, you feel renewed, you feel energized. And it's only once you go out into the world where you actually have to practice what you've learned, and you get rubbed up the wrong way, and you get challenged, and somebody holds up a mirror to you, that the learning process actually starts happening. Otherwise, you're just controlling all the situations, the circumstances and the environments of your life.
Yeah. And it does that whole idea that when I can control every aspect of my life, it will be better. It's actually a bit of a false idea, because many of us have experienced that, we imagined, getting this job, and then when we got it, it wasn't as great. Meanwhile, in another circumstance, maybe you were offered a job you didn't think you wanted, but it turned out to be amazing. So the idea that you can predict what is going to be the best path forward is a bit of a false assumption, right? Sometimes you fall into things that are amazing. You go on a trip to Paris, and then you find yourself in some other city, and it turns out it was the most amazing thing that could have happened.
Yes.
And so I think sometimes we try to do the same when we're crafting our life, because we're used to believing that control is the route to happiness. If I get that job, if I get that degree, if I get that marriage, whatever it is, that will bring me happiness.
Absolutely.
And I think that leads into this whole idea where she was like, I'm focused, I'm productive, I'm independent, I'm the best version of myself when I'm alone. Well, of course you will fulfill all those control mechanisms. I'm going to get up at 5, I'm going to meditate, then I'm going to have some tea, and I'm going to journal, and then I'm going to go for my workout, and then I'm going to, start a new business, whatever it is. You believe that control, that self-sufficiency, that independence is actually, again, your route to happiness, because it feels peaceful. You manage it yourself. Nothing is disrupting your routine. Nothing challenges your preferences. Nothing is introduced new that you might not expect. You don't have to compromise, because it's your own house. It's your own routine. Nobody is bringing dirty shoes in. They're not leaving the keys in the wrong spot on the counter. But, there are a couple things about that. First of all, in relationships, they reveal things, sometimes uncomfortable truths about ourselves, sometimes lovely truths about ourselves that we can't see on our own in isolation, or even with your best girlfriend. A relationship will challenge you. Dating will absolutely challenge you, but it will also give you the opportunity to grow. And if you shut that down because you want to control, every minute of your day to be the most productive person you can, you're going to lose that opportunity. And then the other thing I would say is, nobody is lying on their deathbed thinking, oh, well, I got all those lists done.
It was incredibly productive.
I am a list person. I love a list, and I love ticking them off. I write them on there multiple times in multiple places. But I also know that at the end of my life, that's not going to be the key to my happiness. It won't be that list.
One of the other things I also just thought about was how relationships, actually, what you described reminded me of a share home versus a house that people actually live in. You go into it, everything is perfect. It's well styled.
The blankets, the flowers.
flowers, the blankets, the throw cushions, everything is absolutely perfect. That same home, once a family moves in, is completely different.
Chaos.
It's total chaos. There's laughter, there's life, there's ups, there's downs, there's disappointments. And what is interesting is that, when you're with your girlfriends, they are caressing your ego. They
side with you no matter what you've done.
Correct. Absolutely. And they will never, ever challenge you in a way a relationship can. Triggers of your past relationships, you will never experience with a girlfriend. Being able to navigate differences, that girlfriends cannot give you. Moving out of your comfort zone, trying out new things, having conversations about yourself and a partner, girlfriends cannot give you. And dating allows you to, or opening yourself up to the possibility of dating and love grants you the opportunity to expand yourself. And you get to expand yourself in a different way. So I invite you to, and I ask you the question, if you knew that the most amazing man would enter your life tomorrow, a man who is emotionally mature, a man who loves you in the way you need to be loved, satisfies you and blows your mind intimately,
amazing sex,
girl, who respects you, who adores you, who just wants to love you. If you knew that that person existed, would you welcome that connection, or would you simply turn it down and say, nope, it's no
I like
longer
my keys
it.
where they are, and I don't want any dirty shoes.
Don't want any dirty shoes in my house. Because the answer to that question reveals exactly where you are at this stage of your life.
Yeah. And I think most people would say, oh yeah, if I was at, the local coffee shop, bumped into this, the meet cute movie story, right?
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
you would be totally in, right? It's almost more that the process. And I think to that point, you also have to be in a frame of mind that welcomes it or is open to it. Because by definition, if you are shut down to meeting that person, he's never going to bump into you. He's going to read your energy. He's going to look the other way, and he will never be available to you because you'll send off those signals, whether you intend to, and maybe you intend to. You don't want anyone to talk to you. So the other thing we were talking about earlier, so the number 3 reason is that she didn't want to be a slave to one man. And, volunteering, her example of how she could help a neighbor who maybe broken their leg, or whose partner had died, or whatever it was, or go and volunteer for different organizations. I mean, that quite appeals to me. But I don't think, the whole idea of being a slave to one man, she probably had some pretty negative experiences, and I think a lot of us have had the sort of man-keeping sense where you're making dentist appointments and making sure dinner's on the table and doing the laundry, whatever it is. But at this stage, you don't need to be doing that anymore. Hopefully the guys you would choose are those who are capable. And the ones that a number of the guys I have dated are perfectly capable of managing their own lives, making their own travel arrangements, booking a place for dinner. Yes. And I steer a wide path around those guys who don't make effort or seem like they're going to need a caretaker.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I want a relationship that's a true partnership, and not me, kind of running after him, asking if he sent his mom a card for her birthday.
Or receiving calls from your ex asking him to prepare a list of restaurants
to send to his mom. Yes. Not that that's happened, but at this stage, you're not building your identity. You don't even need to combine households, right?
No,
you can be completely separate, and therefore he would be responsible for his own laundry, his own cleaning regimen, whatever, his dirty shoes. You are not building your identity around someone. You're inviting an enhancement into your life. You're enhancing this life, this amazing life you've built, and you can set the terms. Maybe you spend weekends together or whatever, but you don't need to be a slave. And maybe you can volunteer together, and maybe you can be of service to many people.
Yes, absolutely. You can volunteer on your own. You can volunteer together. It doesn't need to be an extreme one or the other. And I think one of the key words that you touched upon, which I actually feel this in my body, is enhancing the life you've built already. So it comes to the concept of attracting a romantic partner in your life that enhances the life you have. Not fill a void, not fill a gap, not
a slave.
Not a slave. Oh gosh, no. Not a slave at all. You can still enjoy the fullness of your life as well as combine the fullness of your life.
How amazing is that? That just gets me excited, right?
I know, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it.
You've met, you've built this great life. You've got your great girlfriends. You have a great social life. And then into the coffee shop walks this amazing guy who's emotionally mature and says, yes, keep your life and let's enhance it for each other. That would be, and it's great sex. So, why would you say no?
Put me in. Put me in. And I think for both of us, we giggle about it now because we feel so much different. But there was a time when we too were broken, where we too experienced and we were under a heavy storm cloud of trauma, where we too wondered, is love, is it really worth the effort? Is it really worth the
You're
effort?
overcoming like a betrayal, probably.
Yes.
And again, if somebody, somehow it's been a betrayal either of what you imagine the marriage would be, or there's an outright betrayal of some sort. And so why would you put yourself?
Why would you want to go?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's crazy.
You mentioned something very interesting though, and it's about the children, having children. It's very similar. The first time you have a kid, you don't really realize all the poop and the leaking boobs and the nights when you are up for most of the night. And then what do? You decide to have a second kid because
you're insane.
because you're insane, because you recognize the joy that you have. And I think this is the thing that a lot of us miss out on. We think that if we choose to have a relationship again, it's all going to be doom and gloom.
It's going to be the same, right? The same problems.
Same problem, different guy. Not at all. Not when you attract or you choose with discernment. So think about it. After the trauma of our relationships, of course, I remember questioning my judgments. Could I trust myself to make the right decisions? Would I choose well? And after a while, you start thinking, okay, I clearly remember the big F-off sign I had and the dark glasses. And I thought, you know what? Being on my own is the best solution. I feel safe. Nobody can touch me.
Predictable.
Life is predictable. Absolutely. It's controlled. It's predictable. And then over time, you start looking around and you're realizing, but I've also closed myself up. I've closed myself up to the door of possibility, of love, of unexpected laughter, of conversations, of expansion of my mind, of joy. And that starts changing the way you look at life. I remember when my first dating experience, and I remember sharing with you, telling you how this wonderful man that I was dating at the time was introducing me and showing me so many different things. And then to you, Jesus, was I living under a rock before? What had I been doing? Dating had just opened up, not just externally, but it changed me internally. I started evolving as a person. I started wanting to get rid of all those old habits of the past, the baggage that didn't serve me anymore. And I started discovering this new woman that started awakening within me, this new feminine energy that started awakening within me. And once you have this change within yourself, you start seeing how people look at you differently.
Oh, absolutely.
I remember, we'd walk past women and they'd look at you and they'd smile because they knew and you knew how you had changed. And that energy that you were radiating, and I use the word radiating, had changed completely. Gone is the F of sign, and you replace it with the sign of I'm open to possibility and I'm open to the idea of
and
life.
that happens. And it happens, again, to your point just now, it could be, I remember, a woman at the paddle court, making that comment to me, like, wow, your energy. And, it doesn't have to be guys, but everyone starts to see it. And that comes from that openness, that excitement about what could happen, that you never know what's around the corner. But if you've closed off that door, you've decided that, there's no way having children could ever be a positive because I've shut down my life because, I'm stressed, I don't sleep, we have to get a babysitter every time we want to do something, then you miss out on the unexpected joys of, them learning to walk, or them, meeting their grandmother for the first time, or them growing into amazing adults and eventually maybe even getting married. I mean, you have closed yourself because you've decided to only see it through this negative lens. And that's like the last place you want to live your life, is just looking at things as from a negative perspective and not, as you said, the possibility.
And something that's also interesting that we spoke about earlier, just before this recording, is the algorithm. You start finding these reels that speak about how being single is so much better. You start connecting to the next one. The algorithm starts feeding you more of these reels, and you start slowly believing it to be true. And then what happens? You start closing yourself off. And what happens is negativity attracts negativity. And it's what you said earlier, Michelle. When you start looking at life through that negative lens, all you do is attract negative, and all you see is negative. You don't actually open yourself up to anything new, anything beautiful, anything joyful. I remember when I was younger, I had a friend, and he would always say, once you open the door to negativity, it and all its friends comes into your house and trashes the place. And this is so true.
Well,
this is
true.
Absolutely true.
Yeah. And I have a very sensitive negativity alert systems. That, even around friends, if somebody is going off on like the traffic or, some experience they had, I find that really difficult to process, because I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? Where am I supposed to go? I can spend all my time countering your negativity with but that's a lot of energy I'm spending. And so I find that I tend not to want to be around people who are exuding that, right? And I think that in reverse, people pick up on positivity and how you engage. So I think, as we're kind of winding this up a bit, that I think one one of the things that we can see in these discussions, and the algorithm will serve them up to you like crazy.
Oh, yeah. On a silver platter.
On a silver platter over and over, and convince you that, and it's true, independence is powerful. Having control of your life, setting boundaries is absolutely what you should do.
It's admirable.
But you don't want that, kind of almost obsession with the independence and control to become sort of a withdrawal from the possibility. You don't want to make protecting your peace and no drama to be the watchwords of your life. You need to figure out if you are, in fact, setting reasonable boundaries and making sure that you're looking for the right partner to enhance your life, or are you just cutting yourself off 100% from the possibility, thinking that this will bring you the joy that you're actually looking for in your life. And I think there's obviously a huge difference between the shutdown and staying open.
Earlier we asked the question, right? Are women choosing peace over love, or are they in fact choosing protection of the heart, possibility, vulnerability, openness? And maybe rather than choosing one over the other, maybe they can live together. Maybe you can experience it both.
Absolutely.
You don't need a man to complete your life. Of course you don't.
God, no. Very happy without.
Ladies, we are in the most bloody advantageous position ever. We've built houses, we've built careers, we've built families, we've ticked all those boxes already. We don't need a man for any of that. What we need is healthy relationships where we get to choose freely, and we need people with whom we can enhance our lives and we can create a colorful canvas at this stage of life.
Yeah.
The key is not about needing a man. We all know we don't need a man. The key is about finding a partner that enhances the life that you've already built.
So you might be surprised to hear that our end of episode question is, do I need a man? And the answer, Jackie, what is the answer?
I don't.
You don't. So instead of that question, the real question is, have you closed the door to love? Because you've decided there's no way it can add to your life. Yeah. Or have you closed the door because of past disappointments that convinced you there's no way it can add to my life? There's no possibility. Yeah. And I think that's the real question, is why, and is there, can you have both independence and an enhanced, joyful, exciting, adventurous life?
Absolutely. Sarah, do share your comments with us. Let us know your thoughts. Have you closed yourself off to the possibility of love in order to protect your peace? Or are you willing to open yourself up to the possibility of a rich, fuller life?
And if this episode resonated with you, if this discussion sounds familiar and you think a friend could use it as well, please share it with them. Share it with your friends, share it with your family members, and follow us on the socials for more fun discussions, whether it's on YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook.
And remember, at Dating Dames V2, it's not about him, it's about you.